I think my biggest thing is I can make the mistake, but if I don't learn from the mistake and I do it again, then I screwed up. But if you make the mistake and then you correct it and you move on and you don't do it again, then you've done correct. You've done good.
Hello, this is Moryah Jackson, and I'm your host with Lead with Heart. I am so excited that we have Steve Davis with us today. He's the construction manager at Central South Carolina Habitat for Humanity, and he's going to talk to us about his leadership journey and share some tips with us about how to lead with heart. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, you have had a very interesting career trajectory. I would love to hear, how did you get on your path? How did this journey start?
Gosh, I was in sales like forever, and not everyone's made for sales. I found that out, but it was a convenient job, and it was, paid the bills, kept the family fed and everything. But it never was quite, felt like what I wanted to do with my life. Um, and my wife said that at one point she thought it was, where I'm getting old and I just, wanted something different. But I had tooled around with doing habitat in my 20s just as a volunteer.
I love
And
that.
I realized I actually enjoyed construction. I liked working with my hands. It made me think a lot more than sales job did. It made me use my brain for something, and I actually realized I kind of was good at it, just by being a volunteer. And it's kind of weird. At the age of 40, I was talking to a friend of mine who was in construction and went to church with me, and I just said, I kind of in the back of my mind, had this idea about doing construction. And he said, well, I work with Hood Construction, which is a commercial construction, and Mark's my friend. If you would like to talk with him, I can set up an appointment with you. And I thought about it for a while, and I called him back and I said, yeah, I would like to talk to him. Just to, the worst thing you can do is say no. I'm not going to die from that. Um, so I went in, I talked with Mark, and I was 40 years old at the time. And we had a great conversation. I told him, what my experience was, and he's just kind of real quiet. And I talked to him all about it. And finally, he looked at me and says, I don't know who's crazier, you for wanting a job with me at the age of 40 in construction, or me for hiring you. And I looked at him and I said, does that mean you're hiring me? And he said, yeah, we're going to give it a shot. So I went into it, and I was fortunate to get hooked up with some very patient people that worked with me, showed me what to do, um, taught me a lot. Nice thing about it at the time, it was a smaller company, so you had to do everything. It wasn't just I wasn't just a carpenter. I wasn't just a concrete finisher. I was all of that. We had to do everything. So it gave me education in not something I always need. I'll probably never be a rod buster again, but I tied steel for about a year, and just different stuff. And it brought me into where I am now, as far as giving me the knowledge I needed to be able to move on into the residential end of it. And it was kind of weird. I was volunteering on the rooftop with um, Jim Nichols, who was actually one of the founders of the Columbia area habitat. And we were just talking about, I said, Jim, I've been, my gut's been saying I need to get away from commercial and start doing something. And I said, I've been really thinking about habitat. And he got real quiet and he looked at me for a second. I said, what's going on, Jim? And he said, well, Roy, the boss here, put me up on the roof with you because he wanted me to find out if you might be interested coming to work for Habitat.
Perfect.
Weird story, but it's true. And that's where I started, and I have no regrets. It's been a great journey. I've been here going into my 20th year, so it's been fun.
I absolutely love that. There's so much content in that story. And I loved it at first. You said, you were working to pay the bills. A lot of people do that. What tips do you have for people who feel as though they're working to pay the bills, but they want to do something more purposeful? What did you do during that time period, or what tips do you have for someone?
you've heard people talking about listening to your gut, and I feel like that's kind of what I did the whole time while I was doing it. I had this little sound in the back of my head, back in saying, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to be doing something that you really enjoy. Um, Most jobs, you're going to do this. I started in my early 20s, and I'm 67 now, and I still plan on working for a few more years. I don't plan on quitting yet. You really need to enjoy what you're doing. Um, yeah, it's great to pay the bills, but you need to be able to go home and relax and know that you had a great day of work, and what you did was fulfilling, and at in the sales job, like I said, it paid my bills most time, but it just wasn't something I really enjoyed doing, and that's what I think you need to be comfortable in what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing. Life's too short. You don't need to be doing something you don't want to do.
No, that's good advice. What made you listen to your gut? How did you find the courage to listen and do something different? Especially, you said after all these years, you were able to take that leap.
Uh, It's hard to say. Like I said, it was just that conversation with a friend of mine. We were actually at the church, and we were fixing some stuff together, and he kind of just mentioned to me that I kind of look like I know what I'm doing, and I said, no, I have absolutely no idea. I'm watching you, kind of thing. But it just hearing him say, you kind of know what you're doing, and then working as a volunteer with Habitat, I did see, I did know what actually I was kind of doing when I was, because they actually had me leading some groups after a while, and doing stuff like that with the Lutheran group that I was working with, and the whole time I think it was telling me at that time, but I just wasn't listening to it. And then when I finally sat down, I guess I did hear it. And that's when we were just talking, and I heard someone else say, "Hey, you seem like you know what you're doing. Have you ever thought about doing it?" And that's where I moved forward. 40 years old was a crazy. Yeah, I feel like it was, but I did find out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. It's a shame it took me 40 years to find it. But then, I've told other people, it's not a horrible thing. I'm not burned out from doing it. I know a lot of guys that did construction, and it is very hard on your body. I have gnarly up hands and scars all over me, and different injuries from doing the work that came. It is tough work. It's not for everybody. You're working outside in South Carolina heat. It's it takes a certain individual to do it. But I realized I could, and that it felt good doing it. And so, I wish I had listened to it earlier, but in a way, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I'm still able to do it, and still enjoying doing it.
No, that's great. It's always good to listen to yourself. And it's great also to have someone else to talk to. It sounds like you had a good network. How important do you think it was to have certain people in your network to help you get to where you wanted to be?
Gosh, I think the head of my network is my wife, Julie. Um, she sees things probably a little different than I do. I'll step into things sometimes without even thinking about what I'm doing. She's a good control of someone I can talk to, and so, I'm thinking about this or I'm thinking about that. And she's been with me long enough to look at me and say, no, you don't need to do that, or give it a shot, So she's probably the head of my network. I do have a few friends around that, also help with it. Like I said, he got me in there. I haven't seen Steve in a long time, but he was there when I needed someone to talk to, or when I was talking to it. So but yeah, I'm going to have to say probably the head of my network is my wife. And
Good.
fortunately, I do listen to her every once in a while. So it
That's,
works.
that's really good. I also love that you said volunteering helped lead you to where you wanted to be. I think that's really important. How, what do you say about volunteering? Do you encourage young people to volunteer? Do you think it's important to do it? It's a good thing.
The nice thing about volunteering with us is it's getting you one out of the house, getting little remote controls out of your hands, putting a hammer in it instead. And there, who knows? You may be that 18-year-old that comes out and volunteers, and also, like me, you realize, I do have maybe what it takes to be that carpenter, or finish up a driveway. Oh, maybe I am a concrete finisher, or, that job that, because it's kind of scary right now in the construction business. kids really don't want to do it. And we're not a business that can die. We have to have robots can't do what we're doing. Somebody's going to have to do it. And it's kind of scary when you think about, you know, kids not doing it. Someone's got to step up and take over. So the nice thing about Habitat is that they can come out and volunteer, and all of a sudden that light bulb goes over their head, and they say, "Hey, you know, hey, this is kind of fun. Maybe I could do this for a living." And that's the cool thing, you know, working with them. You get to talk to them and tell them, "Hey, you know, you know, my job. I realized, yeah, I do have to make sure everything's on the job site as far as materials and all, but I am a teacher." And the guys that work for me, they're teachers. Because most of the people that come out on job site, they've never done this before. They may have picked up a hammer and put a picture on the wall or something like that. But as far as just going out and really framing a house or putting plywood down on for the floor or you know, just all the basics of hanging windows, hanging doors, all the neat stuff that comes along with being a volunteer. Um, you know, we have to show them how to do that. And we have to be able to tell them in a way that they understand it. We you know, and it can everybody do it? No, I don't think everybody can sit and really explain how to do what we do. But you know, we've been very fortunate to find those bodies that are able to tell people how to do things and get step back and then you just step back and let them do it. And you know, my big thing with them is we don't make mistakes, we make opportunities. We can fix anything that gets messed up. We're not going to lose sleep over a window maybe being put upside downwards. We have these things called sawzalls, and we can take them right back in and put them back in. It's just an opportunity to do something else. You get to use a sawzall now. Um, it's you know we don't make mistakes at Habitat. We just make opportunities, and it's our job to make them feel comfortable doing what they're doing. My biggest thing is if you make someone think they made a mistake and that, oh God, it was horrible, you may never see that person again. And people don't understand, but yeah, one person can make a difference. How was your day at Habitat? Well, it was horrible. I messed up. I put the window in, and yeah, I don't think I'd ever go back and do Habitat again. And then that person talks to Willie down the street, and Willie's like, I heard you went, and yeah, well, it didn't go well. And it can just make a huge difference. So you want everybody to have a good time. You want everybody to feel like they made a contribution, and that's our job to do that.
I think that's wonderful. And I think you made a great point for anyone listening. There's no mistake. You can fix it. Whatever happens, it's okay. And I think that's a very powerful lesson. And I do agree. You have to be a great teacher when you're out on Habitat working with volunteers. Fun fact, and I may have shared this with you before, when I was in high school, I participated in my first Habitat build. And it was one of those moments that stuck with me because I really didn't do a whole lot. I mean, I would go out and help my granddad sometimes, but when you're out at a Habitat house, it's very rewarding to build something. And since then, I've participated in several builds, and I've learned how to do anything from siding to flooring to the rafters, and it's just been amazing. So I wish more young people had that experience. I think it's a great opportunity. Um, you have done a lot over the course of your career. I think something that we don't talk about too often with leadership is like the hard things. You know, what's the situation? When did you have a situation where it was a hard leadership lesson that you either had to teach someone or you had to learn yourself? And what did you learn from it?
I like telling people is us older guys, we happen to get there, you know, the hard way. Listen, you know, listen to what I say. Your way might be correct, but also their way may be correct too. Don't ever say, "Oh no, that's not the way we do that. This is the way we do that." I've always listened to folks. You know, we get a good group of older guys that come in this thing, and they've been doing it for a while, you know, that's why I tell people all the time: listen to people. You know, the way they do things. It might be not the way you do it, but if it's the right way and it's maybe an easier way. But you know, that's one thing I've done in my lifetime is I've always kind of listened to other people. I'm real good at standing back and just listening to the crowd and watching how people do things and do all that, and that's huge because you can learn maybe that what that way I was doing was kind of a little harder. This guy's doing an awful easier way and pick it up and just do the way they do. That kind of sounded like it went all over the place, but
I don't think it went all over the place at all. I mean, I think that's something more people need to learn is listen. And I think listening is a great way to lead with heart. You know, what better way to show somebody that they matter? What better way to show somebody that they're valued than to listen? And so I think that's very powerful. And, you know, even for you to acknowledge, hey, they may have a better way to do it. It may be more efficient. Let's try it out. I think that's great. That's a really good one. Um, do you think it was hard for you to listen? Is it something that you learned over time, or have you always been a natural listener?
um, no, the young Steve Davis, he had a hearing problem. He didn't like to listen to adults. He didn't like to. What would I say to the younger Steve?
That's a good one. Hmm.
Well, after I finally got him tied down in the chair to where he'd sit still long enough for me to talk to him because he was a hyper little kid. Um, I would tell him, maybe you ought to listen to those teachers. They were put there for a reason. Then you wouldn't have had so much problem in school. You might not have failed the eighth grade. You know, listen to people, and as you don't know it all. And we got to be old because we listened and we learned. Um, I think I'm fortunate I did make it to be old because I didn't listen to people and I did some really dumb things when I was a kid and I guess I am fortunate to be here at 67. I wish I'd listened more to people.
Well, you're listening now, so that's a good thing. And you brought up something that I would love to hear a little bit more about if you're willing to share. You mentioned failing the eighth grade. You know, what lessons did you learn from that experience? And are there any lessons that you kind of keep with you today from that experience?
Yeah, my eighth grade year was a rough one. I was with the wrong crowd and I didn't really, I'd go to class and I would sleep. I didn't want to be in the class. I didn't want to be at school. I was very hard headed little radical kid. And, so I went through the eighth grade sleeping and not listening and I did fail, failed terribly, had all F's and I was held back. The good thing that came out of my failure was I got with a little better people. I actually had played some sports, but I found out I actually, was good at sports. I was a pretty fast runner and I could do things other than the stuff I was doing. And, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Failing did open them a lot. You were with a group of friends for, you know, from first grade up to, I went to the same school. So I was with the same people through all those years and all of a sudden they're moving on and I'm sitting back and I'm all introduced to all new folks that I've never met before. There's a few of them from my neighborhood I knew, but I had to meet people all over again. And fortunately, I met the second time around. I did meet a few better people, and actually, we went all the way through high school together. And some of them I still keep in touch with and everything. So, it was mind open. It opened my mind. It was not. Do I suggest everybody fail eighth grade? Absolutely not. It was not, something I really wanted to do, but it did help me. It brought me out of a bad time that I was in and moved me to better ways. And then, I ended up meeting a wife in high school and friends that I'm still friends with and that kind of thing. So it's not something you want to do, but it's something I needed to do, I think, to get me into a little better mind frame.
No, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, that very humbling, and I'm sure you learned a lot from that. I know middle school is just a challenging time in and of itself. So thank you for sharing that. Um, I'm always curious to know what are some things that inspire you? You know, are there any books that you're reading? Is there any music, podcast, articles, resources? Is there anything that inspires you or inspires your leadership?
I don't know. I'd love to read, but my stuff's not educational. It's like Stephen King and quite of these things, that Yeah,
I'm
probably
a
not
firm
the
believer that you learn a lot from fiction. So often,
Oh, I
we
do,
think
I
it
do.
has yeah, so often we think it has to be something that's factual or autobiographical, but I think fiction is very powerful. I know for me, I actually love science fiction. I think science fiction is really cool and it helps me learn a lot. So I think it's great that you read a lot of fiction.
I do like history, I will say it, I like to look at the past. You can learn a lot from the past, but yeah, I'm huge into history. I love our South Carolina history, history is one of the big things. I probably sit and watch a lot of that on TV and stuff like that. I'm not into a lot of the things, but like the History Channel or some of these that uh, archaeology, that kind of stuff. It's really kind of cool and that kind of stuff. But reading wise, no, it's all fiction.
Um, Well-being is really important, and I know particularly in your role, you're talking to a lot of people, you're managing deadlines, you're doing a lot of things. What do you do to recharge your battery?
Um, I take my construction home a lot. We bought an older home, um, and we did want a fixer upper. It wasn't something I just fell into. We did want something that we could make our own, and this house is kind of does that. So that keeps me busy. Just renovated our bathroom upstairs, and uh, we want to do our other bathroom. And I told my wife I'll be glad to pay somebody to do it. So it was it's a little challenging. We like being married to each other. I don't want us to be divorced over a bathroom, but we don't see eye to eye about that. A lot of things, and Julie's right on the things that she sees, but my hard head has to argue a little bit. But I enjoy doing that. We kayaking. We love to go out on Saluda River and kayak. That's a good way to um, keep my body going, but also it's fun. It's just it gets me in another place away from work and everything. But yeah, my two hobbies. If I didn't, I do go out fish every once, but I'm not a good fisherman. Me and the fish don't get along. I don't bring any back in. I usually just go out there and sit, and that's okay because it's me time, which you need some me time. But yeah, I'd say probably just still doing a little bit of construction at home and then working in my yard and kayaking. Those are the probably things that I refuel with.
That's good. That's good. So you also lead a team. What do you do to support your team? And do you have any tips for our listeners in the audience on how to support your team and lead with heart when you have a team of people?
My big thing as I guess as a leader, I know people need to hear when they do good. You can't just tell them they're doing bad. It telling someone you do bad, yeah, you might want to point out in a good way. Don't bring them down, but people need to hear they do good too. They need a pat on the back every once in a while, and they need to know that what I see what they're doing is correct, and that they know what they're doing, and they need to hear that. They're human. Everybody's human. Everybody needs to hear from someone that I'm doing good. And I feel, that's one thing I make sure my guys know that I agree with the way they're doing things, that they're good at their job. I want them to continue to do what they're doing. If they're messing up, I do think it needs to be pointed out to them, but it needs to be pointed out in the right way. There's right and wrong ways to do things. But my big thing is I know everybody needs to hear when they do good, and I'd like to point that out to people. I think don't just tell them they're bad. You got to tell them they're good too.
I think that's a great way to lead with heart. So often we focus on the negative and we don't focus on the positive. So it's great to tell somebody they're doing a good job. I kind of chuckle when you think about parenting. Your child can come home with, a great report card. They'll have A's and maybe one B, and you're like, not good job about the A. You're like, why did you get a B? So I think it's really good to focus on the good things and point out the positive. I think everybody needs that. And that's a great way to lead with heart. So, Steve, right now, there's a lot of information about people being lonely. There's a lot of divisiveness in our society right now. What keeps you hopeful and what keeps you inspired?
My biggest inspiration is probably my family. Been married forever. Me and Julie been married for at least 100 years, and we're actually high school sweethearts. We go back to we met in high school. We have three wonderful kids who have good husbands and wives. I have a daughter and two sons, and they've given me 8 wonderful grandchildren, and I think the grandchildren really revive us. It gives us the kids grew up. We used to go and watch all their sports. We'd go to their games. We'd go to soccer, to baseball. It's nonstop, and now it's kind of funny because that's happening to my kids now, and they're nonstop. But we have, archery to go watch when Waylon's playing archery, or we have, or shooting archery and soccer games. I have two granddaughters who are roller derby girls, and we get to go watch roller derby, and that's like the coolest thing in the world to me. Um, but they're my revival. They're the ones that bring me back up. Having them to be around and seeing them respect me for what I am and want to be around me is huge. So they're probably my biggest. My whole family. I have a great family, and it's great being around them. They're the ones that bring me back up.
That's a wonderful story. Family is obviously very important to you and you value it. I also appreciate how you mentioned how difficult and busy it is. I mean, you were married, you had 3 kids, you had a career, now you have 8 grandchildren. How did you juggle and balance everything, you and Julie?
I have no idea. It's amazing we did because there's a story of me standing at Seven Oaks Ballpark, and Amanda was playing softball, Ryan was playing baseball, and Rusty was playing baseball, and I was standing in the middle watching all 3 games at one time. And we always tried to be at least one of them. Uh, I played baseball for a little while. My parents were hardly ever there, and it does affect you. You're playing for an audience. The audience usually is a family member. Um, so it made a difference, and that was one thing I always wanted to be, was there at their games. I wanted to be at the programs they had at school. My daughter singing the choir. I wanted to be there for choir shows. My youngest son ran track. I wanted to be there. The oldest one played baseball, and it's hard. Ryan's going through it now. My youngest son's going through it because they're doing archery and soccer with Waylon, and Harper played basketball for a while, and she's wanting to get in archery. There's always something going on. So I'm kind of glad to see that my kids, I guess it passed on to them, which is huge. That you need to see that, and now that my kids are involved with all their kids, and it's something I enjoy doing. I still want to be involved with them, but it's tough. You got to find that time though, because it does make a difference. They do need to see you there at their games. They need to see mom and dad there. Mom and dad do need to be involved in all those things. So it's something you have to make that time one way or another. Me and Julie talk about it, and we got a soccer game coming up with Waylon on Sunday, and man, Sunday's our day off, but yeah, we really need to be there. We want to see him play. We want to be there with him. So to me, that's very important.
I love that. And I think that's a great way to show how you lead with heart in your family. So often people work to live or live to work, but family is really important. And I don't think it's something we talk about enough in today's society. Parenting is hard. I'm a mother of 2 boys, and my husband and I sometimes ask, like, how did we survive, especially before they started driving? Because, like you, it's always something. One's going one way, the other one's going the other way, and it's like, how do you manage to get it all? And I feel like there's just this energizer bunny battery that parents have, because you make it happen because you want to be there to support them. But I do think that's a conversation we need to talk about more in today's society. And I do think it's so important for young people to have a caring adult in their lives. I really think it makes a big difference.
I don't see how some single parents do it. It's just, you need that teamwork of being able sometimes. And I admire anybody that's a single parent in this day and time, and they're able to, stay with their kids and make sure that they're doing their homework and making sure that, that they're doing the things they're supposed to do. And then also getting them to games, getting them to, different functions. And, it's tough. I don't see how some of them do it, to be perfectly honest with you.
It's definitely a tough thing to do. So, Steve, you've had a lot of different careers. You're very involved in your family. Do you ever think about what your leadership philosophy is, or what leadership means to you?
Gosh, what would be my leadership philosophy? Um, You need to be understanding for one thing. You got we've talked about it several times. You need to listen. You can't just be that boss that tells you this is the way we're going to do it, and I expect that the way it to be. Um, you need to listen to the people that work with you. Be a a soundtrack. Don't just be a voice. Um, I think that's probably the biggest thing is hearing also, not just not just telling them how it's going to be. Again, my guys worked in the construction business too. They may know that better way. So it's not going to be just my way. This is not the way, it's got to work. You need to be that, little open to everything. And I hope I'm a good boss. Sometimes I go home and I wonder, wow, did I really do well today? But I feel I am, at most time. I'm human too. I make mistakes, and I think my biggest thing is I can make the mistake, but if I don't learn from the mistake and I do it again, then I screwed up. But if you make the mistake and then you correct it and you move on and you don't do it again, then you've done correct. You've done good. So that's my big thing is, yeah, I do. I can screw up and I need to learn from it, but um, I need to be positive with my guys. I need to make them feel great about what they're doing too. Don't want to bring them down. Want to keep things, in a up position. We're moving forward, and let's go with it. And like I said, listen to what they have to say. Don't just be a soundtrack that says this is the way it's got to be.
I love that. I don't think I've heard that before. So you have to be a soundtrack. That is a great way to lead with heart. And from my perspective, the fact that you go home and you reflect on your day, I think that's a trait of a very strong leader. And I think reflection is the best way for us to improve. So I would think you're doing a good job just by saying that you take the time, you think and you wonder, did I do a good job today? I think that's awesome. You've done a lot of different things. Is there any one moment in particular that helped you redefine success for yourself?
Well, I guess the word you're using is redefine, and that's the one I got to think about. If you'd have asked me when I was 20 year old, what success, Steve? Oh, success would be having 8 or 9 motorcycles in my garage, a big boat, a large house, all the money I could ever do with, and everything, and that would have been success for me at that age, which is stupid, but yeah, that's the way you think when you're that age. So success for me now, I feel I'm very successful. I've got a great family. I live in a house that I love. Do I have a Mercedes? No, but I have a pickup truck that gets me back and forth to work every day. And if I need to haul something, I can throw something in the back. We go kayak and I throw it in the back. So um, we're not hungry. If we want to go out and have a meal out with friends, we can and not worry about whether the bill's being paid. Um, we always have money in the check account. That to me, and having a great family and seeing my kids are all doing well. Are we rich? None of us are rich. No, but all of us are paying our bills. All our kids are going to school, getting a great education. Got one in college, one about to head to college. So all three of my kids gave it a shot. One of them graduated. The other two decided it wasn't for them. But they were able to get jobs, and they all had steady jobs. They're all working hard. To me, that's success. So to refine success, yeah. Um, I think now at this age, I don't have all those millions, and would I like to have the 8 motorcycles in my garage in the boat? Yes, I would. I'm not going to lie to you there, but I don't have to have them. I'm not dying. My world moves on. Um, I think my two successes would be completely different. You ask any kid what success, and they're going to hear a different story than that 67-year-old man. But I think our life's been very successful. I'm happy where we're at.
I love that. I think that's a great response. And it's just amazing how our definitions change over time. And I think you focused on what really matters. And, what better way to lead with heart than to make sure you have your basic needs and you have gratitude for what you have. So that's very powerful. As we're wrapping up, Steve, what message would you like to leave with our listeners about leading with heart?
Like leading with heart, you got to care about people. Um, it's not all about you. It's we live in a world that needs a lot of love. It doesn't hurt to pass it on. Um, but just care about people. That's the biggest thing to me is just show care. You don't have to be that. There's that leaders out there think that you just got to tell everybody what to do and all that. But I think a true leader cares about the people that work for them, the people that work with them. Um, that's the big thing to me is it's just caring about things. Give respect to people.
I think that says it all. What a great way to end. Respect is so important. It's something that you do, it's how you speak to people, and the world definitely needs more care. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot from you about leading with heart, and I just appreciate you and what you do. And best wishes for continued success.
Well, thank you for asking me. This was fun. I enjoyed it.
Thanks. Me too.